This is the 13th and final section of Nicomachean Ethics, Book 1, and I will be finishing off the first book in English and in Greek. And I think I will take a few pauses when it gets to the line 1102B and 1103A. I will switch back and forth to give myself three alternations of English, Greek, English, Greek, English, Greek. So I'm going to attempt to do that to finish off the book. Starting with chapter 13, section 13, I should say, or maybe chapters, okay? The psychological foundations of the virtues. Since happiness is a certain activity of the soul in conformity with perfect virtue, we must now examine what virtue or excellence is. For such an inquiry will perhaps better enable us to discover the nature of happiness. Moreover, the man who is truly concerned about politics seems to devote special attention to excellence. Since it is his aim to make the citizens good and law-abiding, we have an example of this in the lawgivers of Crete and Sparta and in other great legislators. If an examination of virtue is part of politics, this question clearly fits into the pattern of our original plan. There can be no doubt that the virtue which we have to study is human virtue, for the good which we have been seeking is human good, and the happiness a human happiness. By human virtue, we do not mean the excellence of the body, but that of the soul, and we define happiness as an activity of the soul. If this is true, the student of politics must obviously have some knowledge of the working of the soul, just as the man who is to heal eyes must know something about the whole body. In fact, knowledge is all the more important for the former, inasmuch as politics is better and more valuable than medicine, and cultivated physicians devote much time and trouble to gain knowledge about the body. Thus, the student of politics must study the soul, but he must do so with his own aim in view, and not to the extent that the objects of his inquiry demand. To go into it in greater detail would perhaps be more laborious than his purposes require. Some things that are said about the soul in our less technical discussions are adequate enough to be used here. For instance, that the soul consists of two elements, one irrational and one rational. Whether these two elements are separate, like the parts of the body or any other divisible thing, or whether they are only logically separable, though in reality indivisible, as convex and concave are in the circumferences of a circle, is irrelevant for our present purposes. Of the irrational element, again, one part seems to be common to all living things in vegetative nature. Vegetative in nature. I mean that part which is responsible for nurture and growth. Okay, we're going to read a tiny bit more in English because I don't think that finished the section. We must assume that some such capacity of the soul exists in everything that takes nourishment in the embryonic stage as well as when the organism is fully developed. For this makes more sense than to assume the existence of some different capacity at the latter stage. Επίδεστη η ευδαιμονία ψυχής, ενεργειάτης κατ' αρατήν τελείαν, περιαρατής επισκεπτέων αν ii, tagaroutos on veltion, que peritis evdomenias theorisimen, tho qui the que o cat olithion politikos peritaftin malista peponisa. Fulitigar tus politas agathus pien, que to nomon epicous. Paradigma the tuton Echomentus Creton ke Lacedaemonion nomothetos ke itinas ateri tiuti gegeninda. Either tis politikis estin e skepsis afti. Thilon oti genitan isitisis cat tin exarchis proeresin. Peri aretis the episkepteon anthropinis thelon oti. Kegar tagathon anthropinon ezitumen. Ketin evdemonian anthropinin. Aretin the legamen anthropinin u tin tusomatos alatin tis psychis. Ketin evdemonian the psychis energian legamen. Either taf dutos echi, thilon oti the ton politikon ethana, post ta peripsychin, osper keton ophthalmus, therapevsunda, ke pantosoma, ke malon oso, Timiotera, ke veltion, e politiki tis jatrikis. Hon the atron, e cariandes, hola, pragmatavonde, peri tin tu somatos gnosin. Theriteon the, ke to politico, peri psychis, theriteon, ke tuton chorin, ke f oson ya Ephoson econoseci pros tazi tumina, togar epiplion ex acrivun, ergo thesteron isos esti ton procumeno. Legata the peri aptis kentis exotericis logis arctundos enya ke Christeon of tis, eon to men ologon of tisina, ke the to the logon akon, tafta the poteron the oriste kathaper tatu somatos moria, ke ponto meristone e to logo the o estin, a horista Peficota cathaper en ti periferia to kirton ke to kilon uthen the aferi prostoporon. To a logu the tomen eike chemo ke fitico lego the to ation to trefista ke afxista tin tiaftin gardinamin tis picis en apisi tis trephomenis thei tis on kein tis emvriis tin of tin the toftin Ke entis teliis evlogoteron gar I alin tina. Okay, 1102b is where we're starting. We must assume that in some such capacity of the soul exists in everything that takes nourishment, in the embryonic stage as when the organism is fully developed. For this makes more sense than to assume the existence of some different capacity at a later stage. The excellence of this part of the soul is therefore shown to be common to all living things and is not exclusively human. This very part and this capacity seem to be most active in sleep. For in sleep, the difference between a good man and a bad is least apparent. Whence the saying that for half their lives the happy are no better off than the wretched. This is just what we would expect, for sleep is an inactivity of the soul, and that it ceases to do things which cause it to be called good or bad. However, to a small extent, some bodily movements do penetrate to the soul in sleep. And in this sense, the dreams of honest men are better than those of average people. But enough of this subject. We may pass by the nutritive part, since it has no natural share in human excellence or virtue. In addition to this, there seems to be another integral element of the soul, which, though irrational, still does partake of reason by some part. And morally strong and morally weak men, we praise the reason that guides them and the rational element of the soul, because it exhorts them to follow the right path and to do what is best. Yet we see in them also another strain different from the rational, which fights and resists the guidance of reason. The soul behaves in precisely the same manner as do the paralyzed limbs of the body. When we intend to move the limbs to the right, they turn to the left, and similarly, the impulses of morally weak persons turn in the direction opposite to that which reason leads them. However, while the aberration of the body is visible, that of the soul is not. But perhaps we must accept it as a fact, nevertheless, that there is something in the soul besides the rational element which opposes and reacts against it. In what way the two are distinct need not concern us here. But as we have stated, it too seems to partake of reason. At any rate, in a morally strong man, it accepts the leadership of reason, and it is perhaps more obedient still in a self-controlled and courageous man, since in him everything is in harmony with the voice of reason. Thus, we see that the irrational element of the soul has two parts. The one is vegetative and has no share in reason at all. The other is the seat of the appetites and of desires in general, and partakes of reason insofar as it compels with reason and accepts its leadership. It possesses reason in the sense that we may say it is reasonable to accept the advice of a father and of friends, not in the sense that we have a rational understanding of mathematical propositions. That the irrational element can be persuaded by the rational is shown by the fact that admonition and all manner of rebuke and exhortation are possible. Toptis men un kini tis orati ke uk anthropini fenete. Though kigar in tis ipnis, energin, malis de to morion tuto, ke evinamis afti. O the agathos ke kakos ik is de the kathipnon, othen facin uthen the affarin toimi si tu vio tus evdemonos ton athleton. Simveni the tuto ikotos. Argiagaristine oitnos tis ptikis e legata sputhea ke favli. Plin imi kata mikron ke the iknun detines ton kineseon. Ke tafti veltio geneta ta fandasmata ton epi icon e ton ticondon. Alla peri mentuton alis ke to threpticon eteon. Epi vitis anthropi kis oretis amiron peficen eike the kealitis physis tis psychis allegosina me tecusa mendi p logu tugar ekratus ke akratus ton logon ke tis psychis to logon Akon epenumen orthos garke epi ta veltista parakali. Fanata the en of tis ke alo ti para ton logon pefikos. Omakata ke anditini to logo. A technoscar kathaper ta paralelimena Tu somatos moria is tadexia pro eromenon kinesa. Tuandiu is ta aristera paraferata ke epitis psychisutos. Epitandia gar e orme ton acraton. Al intis somasi men oromen to parapheromenon epithetis psychis oromen. Isos the uthen eton ke enti psychi no misteon ineti paraton logon. Enandiumenon tuto ke andi venon. Pos the eteron uthen the afferi. Logu the ke tuto feneta metechin, osper ipamen. Pitharchigun to logo to tu ekratus. Eti visos evico oteronesti to tu sophronos ke andriu. Pondagar homophony to logo. Fanata the ke to oligon the tone. Tomengar fi tikon uthamos ki no ni logu. To the epithemitikon ke olos oretikon meteki pos. E katiko honesty of tu ke pitharchikon uto the ke tu patros ke ton philon famen ekin logon ke uk osperton mathematikon. Oti the pithetaposu po logu to oligon minii ke e nuthetisis ke pasa epistemis te ke paraklesis. If it is correct to say that the appetitive part 2 has reason, it follows that the rational element of the soul has two subdivisions. The one possesses reason in the strict sense contained within itself, and the other possesses reason in the sense that it listens to reason as one would listen to a father. Virtue, too, is differentiated in line with this division of the soul. We call some virtues intellectual and others moral. Theoretical wisdom, understanding, and practical wisdom are intellectual virtues. Generosity and self-control, moral virtues. In speaking of man's character, we do not describe him as wise or understanding, but as gentle or self-controlled. But we praise the wise man, too, for his characteristic. And praiseworthy characteristics are what we call virtues. Ida cri ke tuto fanen logon ekin. The tone este ke to logon ekon to men kyrios ke anafto to the osper tu patros acousticonti. The orizate the ke iareti katatin diaphoran taftin. Lego men gar of tone tas men the noitikas tas the ithikas. Sophian men ke sinasin ke phronisin the anoitikas eleftheriotita the ke sophrosinin ithikas. Lagones gar perituithus, ulegomenoti sophos, sinitos, all oti praos, sophron. Epinumen the ke ton sophon, kata tinexin, ton exeon, the tas epinitas, or tas legomen. And that is the end of Book 1 of Nicomachean Ethics. And I will be reading Book 2 in the future. Thank you all for watching. Philia and adio.